And I think as I've got older and I'm beginning to understand about parenting, you know, I will say thank you to my daughter because, you know, she's really taught me a lot. You know.
But you feel like you wasn't there as much?
I was there, but I wasn't there. It was like, come on children, let's go. Jump in the car. And looking back on it now, I was there, but I wasn't there.
Yeah.
It's like, Dad, give me money. Yeah, go shop. But I think that time, it was almost like, that teenage rebellion time, if that kind of makes sense, where you kind of go, oh, you know what, they're always moody, you know, they're always this, they're always that, oh, you don't listen, you know. But the question is, I wasn't listening.
So, Nicholas, what's happening, sir?
All right, thank you.
It's been a long time coming. This is our podcast, LITC Podcast, Ep.3. All right, so one of the things that we're doing with our podcast, the way we like to start is by looking at a bit of art. And this is the artwork that we've got in. And just tell me what that says to you.
I've kind of learned not to judge art, you know, having working with quite a number of artists. But I don't know, I can see some signs and some numbers up at the top. Yeah. Actually, kind of thinking of it, it kind of reminds me of those African masks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, it looks like one of those figurines that, you know, I kind of started seeing when I went back to Nigeria years and years ago, you know, at the altars.
Yeah, nice. I don't know, I'm looking at it, like, to be fair, it's quite, I get the feeling of rituals, something a bit mysterious, something a bit dark. Obviously there's colours in it, but I don't know, I get like, I'm Muslim, so I get a feeling of there's something that in Islam, like the jinns, like the spirits and whatnot. Do you know what I mean? And I get that sort of feeling. Like I'm watching, when I'm looking at that arrow, I can see an eye.
Okay.
So some sort of
I can
watching.
see the two eyes here.
Yeah.
And to me, it's almost like this is the head.
Yeah.
Then this becomes the nose.
Yeah,
but then is it really a nose?
Do you get what I'm saying?
It's for me, it's funny because you just said something dark.
Yeah.
And I think for me, because I kind of grew up away from this country, I don't see it as being dark.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't see it as being dark.
So where do you think that comes from? When you say you grew up away from this country?
Because I think, you know, I think the perception is people tell us what is supposed to be the norm and what norm is it. So because we're not familiar with it, you know, as I said, I was born here and I went back over to Nigeria and, you know, I lived in the quarters or the village.
Wait, let's stop. Don't go too far ahead.
But the thing is, for me, when I went back in 1979, you know, those were things that I was seeing in people's houses. So it became the norm for me. Where somebody who's over here, it's not the norm. If that kind of makes sense.
And when I said about dark, do you feel like it's from a negative point of view, like it's associated with?
I think it's associated with what is the standard norm.
Yeah.
And what is the standard norm here in comparison to anywhere else.
All right, cool. I'm cold at the moment.
I thought you were going to fund us.
No, you know
to
what
get
it was?
heated.
Like, I had my jacket on, but I thought it wouldn't be professional, but it was cold in this place.
Do you know, one of the things I will touch on in terms of it being cold, it is cold, but also what people need to realize is it's a concrete building.
Yeah.
But also, because of how this space is, nobody really wanted it.
I get you. All right. So I said your name, Nicholas Okwulu.
Yeah.
So tell me who Nicholas is. Because we're talking about, did I pronounce it right?
You did.
All right, thank you.
I couldn't even tell you the meaning of my name.
All right, go on. So what I want to know is how it all started. Who is Nicholas Okwulu?
Who am I?
Where you grew up.
Okay.
How you grew up.
My parents came over here in the 60s. I think my dad came around 1964. My mum came 1966, more or less the year that I was born. And I was born in Vauxhall.
It's unfortunate.
What do you mean unfortunate?
Carry on. Sorry, I don't want to interject. Carry on.
I was born in Vauxhall, and then my parents bought a house in Streatham. So we lived in Streatham. You know, it was a really good time there. I mean, I remember it, you know, summer of 1976 when it was, you weren't born then, were you?
No.
Summer of 1976 when it was really, really hot. I think we had the hottest, you know, we had a heat wave then. And then around 77, 78, we moved to Loughborough Junction. Which is where quite a lot of people know me. But I only stayed there for about 2 years. I went to Winning Penn School, and in 1979, when they had the dinner ladies strike.
Dinner ladies strike? What,
yeah.
Dinner ladies strike?
They weren't paying them enough.
Okay.
So I think the dinner ladies went on strike, and I had to go home. And, you know, I was in my school uniform, kind of like, you know, walking along people's fences, you know, around Red Post Hill, you know, making my way back to Loughborough Junction. And, you know, all I remember is, you know, police pulling up and saying, put your hands up, lie on the ground.
How old were you?
12. I was 11 going 12.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember...
Was it just you by yourself or?
No, it was me and one of my classmates.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember just having a gun pulled on me, you know, by the police during that time. And, you know, my mum decided that, you know, because of the racism that was going on then, it was best for me to go and stay with my dad back in Nigeria. So I went back to Nigeria.
See, and you know what, thinking about that, I know, like, see, how times change. Well, not even how times change.
But has it
different
changed?
for you. No, that's what I said, not even how times change in terms of, you're telling me you went back to Nigeria at a young age. Straight away in my head, I'm thinking about all my friends. They went back because they were being naughty. Do you know what I mean? That was quite a
but the
normal
thing
thing
is,
to do.
But the question is, were we naughty or was it because of the way the system was at that time?
Well, some of my friends, I can only talk about some of my peers, they blatantly were naughty and were getting in trouble. So I'm saying it's surprising for me. Not even surprising, I've not heard that before. You've actually gone back because your mum's like, no, you know what? Your safety's in jeopardy.
Yeah.
Do you get me? And as opposed to, right, my son's going down the wrong road. So that's it's quite different. But go on, continue, sorry.
So I went back to Nigeria, and it was kind of funny because I got to Lagos, got to this big house. I was like, oh, okay, it's not going to be that bad.
Yeah.
I can cope.
One of them ones, yeah.
Yeah.
So what was you saying that, yeah?
No, I didn't finish the story, by the way.
Yeah,
Can I just finish?
Yeah, go on.
So I thought, brilliant.
Yeah.
A couple of days later, it's like, oh, we're going home. I'm like, oh, I thought this was home. It wasn't. And my dad took me back to the village where he grew up, you know, no electricity, no running water. So every morning we had to go to the river to collect water before going to school. And I think for me, it kind of made me, I think that's what's kind of made me who I am. That, you know, I don't wait for people to give me stuff. You know, it's like, okay, I want something, I need it. How do I go about, you know, getting it? I remember, you know, I actually remember, you know, setting up my own farm when I was 14.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, my dad had his own poultry. So, you know, buying and selling chicken. My dad was also a paint technologist. So my dad was also making paint out there. And I kind of learned to become...
What's a paint technologist?
So I used to make paint.
Okay.
Make the colours, make paint literally from scratch.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was his line of work. And kind of just got used to kind of like being independent and not really relying on people. And I think also my dad was a politician as well in Nigeria. So, and that's one of the reasons why I don't go into politics. Because for me, I've never... Do you know what? I think, I don't know, I've got a lot of opinions about politics.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think lots of people are not really that genuine going into politics because I think when you go into politics, you're about representing the people, not about representing yourself. And I think that's just the issue that I have about politics in these days. And, you know, I couldn't see myself becoming a politician. I think I do a lot of things that are kind of political, but I will not become a politician if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. And I think like at the time we're in now, it's very, well, for myself, it's very hard, like when you look, because I think I'm in the middle, because there's certain things that I hear the right say, and I blatantly agree with it because it agrees with what my situation at the time. And there's certain things I hear the left say, and I agree with that. So for me, I find it really hard, especially in this current climate. But just quickly, what I wanted to say, you said your surname, Okwulu, you could tell me all about it. So where does it come from?
So my surname is Okwulu, which is Igbo. Okay. And, a brief interpretation really is about words from deep down within. If I remember correctly, from my great-grandmother, it was Okwuluaniafo, which means the words that come from right deep down inside the gut, if that kind of makes sense. To you and me, Shakespeare.
Nice. So continue. So growing up, so you was in Nigeria.
Yeah, so I grew up in Nigeria, and I grew up in a place called it was called Bendel State at the time, and it was funny because the current president who we have in Nigeria now actually took over in a military coup. Yeah, around 1982, if I'm correct. And I think for a lot of us who reminisce about Nigeria, it was one of the best times because they had this program called War Against Indiscipline, which meant you had to queue up at the shop, you had to you had to be quite civil. And every Saturday we did what was called the sanitation day. So you weren't allowed to go to the farm, you weren't allowed to do anything until everywhere had been swept. The village, the towns, the roads, everywhere had been swept and cleaned up.
Sounds reminiscent of what we're going through now. Lockdown and whatnot.
Exactly. So, and I think I did, I went for my O-levels around about 1984. Did my O-levels, and then from 84 to 85, I think my dad wanted me to go to go and do A-levels, but I wasn't an A-level person. And then, they decided that, my mum was back here, and then me and one of my brothers literally came back to the UK to stay with my mum in Brixton, Summerleyton Estate, Kent Walk, which is no more at this moment.
Oh, do you have siblings?
I've got 3 sisters and 2 brothers. Okay. So we came back to Brixton.
So your dad stayed in Nigeria. So were your mum and father not together?
No, they were together.
So how comes he was over in Nigeria and she was?
My dad was Nigerian through and through.
Yeah. So was he just never on it? He was like, it's not for me.
Nah.
Did he ever come to England?
No, he did come back. Passed away 17 years ago. Is it 17? Yeah, about 17 years ago. So. But I think it was almost like we were home away from home.
Yeah.
If that kind of makes sense.
No, it does make sense. What was that like though, in terms of, was this like, well, that's my family, it's just normal for how we are, like my dad lives over there, my mum lives over here. What was that like, and what do you feel what effects it would be in terms of on your mum, on your father? What do you think the effects were?
The thing is, I don't think the effects were on my parents, and I would say that the effects was really on a lot of us who were children who grew up from those relationships. I wouldn't say relationships that grew up from that, because I think you then have this issue of who are you, where are you from? Are you British? Are you Nigerian? Are you Sierra Leonean? Are you Cameroonian? Are you from Mali? Are you from Senegal? I think that becomes a problem. Yeah. So for me, I think one of the best, and I think also amongst my, with my siblings as well, the best thing is that I'm bilingual, sorry. And I think
you're looking a bit light at the moment. Like you're looking a bit light.
I said bilingual.
Cold. You went biracial, like what I mean. But
no, I didn't say that because he's going to edit it out. That was a mistake. Yeah, so
bilingual. Yeah,
bilingual. And for me, that's really, really good, because I think also that's also given me an immense sense of pride. But also at the same time, the issue that's also risen from it is that people tend to think that I'm quite arrogant. It's not about arrogance. I've got 100% pride and confidence in who I am, where I came from, and they always say, if you want to know where you're going, you've got to know where you're coming from. Yeah. And I think for me, and I think, the confidence really is, I had the pleasure, when I went back to Nigeria, of actually meeting my great-grandmothers on both sides. Yeah. And I think for a lot of people, that's That's like Mission Impossible, you know. So for me, having that memory of meeting my maternal grandmothers, my paternal grandparents, and actually seeing the places where they grew up and seeing the places that made my parents who they are. You know, it's given me a great sense of pride because, you know, you can come from London, you can come from Brixton, and the question is, all of a sudden, you're no longer from Brixton, if that kind of makes sense. And I think for me, you know, being able to see that place where my parents came from, being in that same place where my parents grew up, you know, and actually, you know, just being there, or people saying, "Oh, look at this person, he's got the same characteristics as his father," and probably they've never met you, but just by doing something, they go, "Yeah, that's so and so's son, or that's so and so's daughter."
Okay, so when you're saying that sense of pride, where did the actual pride come from? Like you said, you met your great grandmothers, but what was you proud about? What was it?
Do you know what? I think when you talk to people, you know, and you know, they sit and tell you, "I don't know my grandparents." You know, I met my grandparents and my great grandparents. You know, so for example, just to give an example, the new president for, is it the World Trade Organization, is actually a relative of mine, Ngozi Okonjo, and my great grandmother is from her family and had the same surname, Okonjo.
Yeah. Okay. So knowing your history, like your family line, your tree.
So for example, you know, it'll probably be a surprise. My son and daughter probably hearing this, but I actually know where the connection actually comes from.
Yeah, I get you.
And I actually know directly where that connection actually is. You know, and I think, you know, as African people, we always say, "Oh, that's my cousin, that's my cousin."
Yeah, 100%.
You see,
extended family.
But actually knowing, you know, where that relationship actually is.
Okay.
I think that's something that gives you great pride, that, you know, you don't just, I mean, it's funny because when, you know, I go to Nigeria, it's like, "Oh, this person's your cousin because they're so-and-so removed." And I'm like, yeah, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
I just want to know, you know, what the immediate ones are. You know, I've got other cousins, distant cousins that we're related to, not just because, you know, we call ourselves cousin, but we can actually trace back to our forefathers and how we're actually related. And I think for me, you know, I think sometimes, you know, when I hear people say, "Yeah, I'm so-and-so cousin X times removed," I'm like, what does that exactly mean? Does that make sense?
You know, I get you 100%. So so if you can continue, you said you came back to England, you was with your mother, you and your brother came back.
I came back, and it was funny because, you know, while I was in Nigeria, and I think most Nigerians and probably most Africans can attest to. So in my third year, when I was in boarding school in Nigeria. In my third year, I remember going to the class and I picked, you know, religious education, commerce, English literature. I chose all the soft subjects, and you know, went away, came back the next day, and they're reading out the register, and you know, I didn't hear my name. I put my hand up with my English accent. "Excuse, sir, you didn't mention my name." He went, "Hold on a minute." He looked. He said, "Oh, you're not in this class. You're in 3C." And 3C is chemistry, biology, physics.
Yeah, okay.
It's physics, chemistry, physics, biology, chemistry. Sorry, physics, biology, and chemistry. And I was in that class. I'm like, I didn't put in for that class. No, you didn't. Your dad did. So I ended up doing physics, chemistry, and biology, which I got to admit I actually really, really hated.
Yeah.
But, you know, my dad's paying, so I had to do it. And then when I came over here in 1985, I'm like, yes, freedom. You know, I was out of the clutches of my dad. He couldn't tell me what courses I could do or not do. But I kind of realized I'd spent like the best part of 3 years studying physics, chemistry, but you don't just drop it like that, if that kind of makes sense. So I think when I came here, I had to redo my O levels, as they were called at the time. Did O levels and then went to do biochemistry, BTEC biochemistry at college on Tooley Street. where Southwark Council's just around the corner from Southwark Council's office. And I did that. And then kind of went, do you know what, is this really what? No, actually, I tell a lie, actually. I went to do my work placement at UCL.
Okay.
And
was that part of your course?
Yeah. I think I worked in the labs at UCL, and I remember doing the course and speaking to them and actually working at how much they were earning, and I just thought, nah, not for me.
No.
Nah. Most stupidest move I ever made, actually. Because I think lab technicians, I think if you look at the vaccines and people making chemicals and all that kind of stuff, you know, it would have been quite a lucrative business to kind of go into.
Yeah.
But I finished college, and I think while I was at college, I'd started collecting records.
Yeah.
And that kind of took me down the whole DJ path.
Well, we've known each other for a long time. Go on, DJ path.
Yeah, I used to be a DJ.
Yeah?
I started on the radio.
Yeah.
You know, I actually started collecting records because, you know, those are the days with TDK tapes, Maxell, Fuji tapes, Fuji metal tapes. And so we used to play on Loughborough Junction, and I think it was funny because I think my friend brought, you know, SL 1200s, Jamo speakers, and I think every party that happened on Loughborough Estate in those days.
Yeah. You was involved?
I was involved in many of them.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was funny because my friend got these really good speakers, these really good Jamo speakers. People used to go, just have to sit and listen. You can tell which one I was DJing at.
And where were they? In houses in the estate?
Literally on most of the 7 blocks. Is it 7 or 8 towers in Loughborough Junction?
Yeah.
So I didn't really have to go far.
I don't even know the estate. But
So it's got like 8 tower blocks.
Yeah.
And I was in any one of those over a weekend DJing.
And how was that? Give me a picture. What did that look like for people that have not been to the estate or didn't know what the climate was at the time? What was it like?
Do you know what? I think that's when we really had a sense of community. And I think for me, that's the time that I hark back to. You know, there was no black, no white. It was just one big community. So if you lived on Loughborough Estate and you were around the same age, we all knew who was who. We all knew who played records. We all knew who was good at playing records. We all knew who was rubbish at playing records, you know, and we all knew where the party was going to be. So, you know, started importing, you know, Rare Groove records from America. And then I started distributing records after a while, you know, worked with people like Orlando Gittins, who runs Soul Town, Wayne Marshall, Rick Clark, who else?
So what does that look like when you say distributing records? What does that
So
look
I used
like?
to pick up lots of UK artists. So from DJing, I then went to work for Jetstar Records in North London, and I kind of made even more links. And then from there, I started contributing to Touch Magazine, which was monthly at the time. Touch Magazine. Then I also did a compilation. I did a chart in the Voice newspaper.
Yeah.
You know, and it was really about showcasing UK artists. I think this was probably about 1990, probably about 93, 94, around then. And then I think a couple of years after that, well, I'd had children by then anyway. And as they were growing up, I kind of thought, you know what, this isn't really the life I really want to live. It was nice how it started. And then I kind of just decided to use my biochemistry background and went into pharmaceutical sales. Okay,
well, going back, so you was basically in the music industry, you're saying? So,
well, trying to get into the music industry.
And what was that like in terms of, so that was something obviously it was natural to, so what was that like breaking into that music industry or trying to get into that music industry?
The thing is, I think it was difficult.
Yeah.
For me, I mean, I would say that it was difficult, but I think I kind of knew what I wanted. So, you know, I went from picking up records off artists, playing it on my radio show. Then I set up my own distribution label. So I'd pick their records up and take them around to all the local shops. And we used to do, you know, I think they still do it now, called sell and return. So you go in, you put the records in, and then you come back a week later, see how many were sold. So yeah, that's what I used to do.
And how old was you at that time?
God, probably in my 20s.
So would you say that you're quite entrepreneurial from a young age?
I did what I needed to do to survive. I think that's what it boiled down to. And also, when you're buying records, it's also quite an expensive hobby as well. So, I needed to kind of like supplement it in one way or the other. So, sell a couple of records, make a little bit of profit, buy another record, you pick up. And then also, I think the good thing, I was also lucky as well because my mum worked for British Rail.
Okay.
So I got a free British Rail pass.
All right.
So I used to travel to Liverpool, Manchester, Peckham, all the places I just used to just jump on the train and go to these far-flung out places and just go and buy records and then bring it back. And I remember I always used to walk with 2 bags. So on my backpack, I always used to have the records that I didn't want anybody to see.
Yeah.
And then in my, the ones I had to carry in my hands were literally as soon as I got out of Brixton Tube Station. Yeah. It's like, which ones do you want?
Yeah.
Trying to make money back, really.
Okay.
So I think it was just really a way of surviving, and also I think with the whole record thing, it was kind of going into something completely new and different for me at the time.
Yeah, and you said so along that time, you said you had a couple of kids,
children.
Yeah, children.
A
couple of children. Yeah, this guy. So you had a couple of children. And what was that? How was that relationship in terms of?
I think I had a good relationship, and that was one of the reasons why I kind of gave up DJing because it was a case of preferring to be with my children rather than going out. And I think I think there was a reason why I actually stopped DJing because I actually went to a record shop, and I think I was in my 20s, and I actually remember talking to a guy who had this ponytail and all his hair receded. And I thought, that's going to be me.
Yeah.
And I was like, nah.
Yeah.
Don't want it. I think, and that just put me in a situation where it's like, you know what, go and do something else, something that you'll actually enjoy. And I didn't really want to be in a situation of having a ponytail and receding forehead.
Yeah.
And then, having younger people. Put it this way, I didn't want to be in a situation of how I was looking at him.
Yeah. So you're saying it was a young man's game, basically.
Yeah.
You got to a stage when you just thought.
Yeah. And what I didn't want to do is I didn't want to get caught where I became too old that I had to be in the music game, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. So moving forward, so you said you went into, is it biochemistry?
Yeah, I went to work for a number of pharmaceutical companies.
At what level? Is that because of the qualifications you had before? How did you just get into that? How did that work?
I cheated.
Go on, explain.
I kind of cheated. Well, I wouldn't say I cheated. I didn't cheat, actually.
You cheated? I didn't cheat.
I didn't cheat.
Go on.
I saw an opportunity.
Yeah.
And the opportunity was called Equal Opportunities. I don't know if you remember Equal Opportunities in those days where... It's like, let me not say something rude. It's like what we're going through now, diversity and inclusion. It was like everybody should be given a chance to be opportune to do something that they wanted to do, or to have access into an industry that would not necessarily allow you into those kind of industries. And for me, it was weird because, as I said, I did a BTech biochemistry, but I didn't have a degree. And I think I'd worked for a double glazing company. I did my records, worked for a double glazing company. That was part-time. And I kind of decided, you know what, I'm going to go and work for a pharmaceutical company. And I remember, it was an issue with me and my dad because I said to him, I'm leaving. No, I worked for I worked for a double glazing company. Then lucky enough, I got a marketing job with a subsidiary of VW when Skoda and VW were merging. So I was working in Hackbridge at the time for this marketing company that did marketing on behalf of VW. I remember doing that for, I think it was about 2 years, and then kind of deciding that's not what I want to do. Then I went I remember one Christmas, I think it came up to Christmas. It was coming up to Christmas, so I told my boss, I said, I'm leaving at Christmas. And he was like, what are you going to go and do? I said, I don't know yet, but I'm not doing this anymore. He goes, what, you're not happy? I'm happy, but it's not really what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I think I've got another call in. I think I remember telling my dad, and my dad was totally pissed. So my dad was not really happy about it. But I was like, do you know what? I want to do something, but I don't know what it is. And I think after sitting down and speaking to somebody, they kind of suggest, oh, that's it. Don't know if I should tell this story.
Yeah,
No,
I think you should.
I'm not going to tell it.
No, I think you should tell it.
Okay, so I was going out with somebody at the time, and I was still selling records, and I think I was going on a date, and for some reason I didn't have any money, and I was like, boy, I need to go on this date.
Yeah,
had the car, so what I did, I pulled some records out, stuck them in the back of the car, picked the girl up. And I remember talking on the phone, and I was saying to her, look, I ain't got the money to go out at the moment. She was like, okay then. And then I phoned up and I said, look, let's go out. So I put records in the car, and then remember picking her up, going to a record shop, selling records, and then going on a date. And she said, oh, so you did biochemistry? I went, yeah. And you're also a good salesman? I mean, I guess so. And she said, have you thought about working in the pharmaceutical industry? And I was like, nah, not really. And I think being Nigerian, or I'd probably also say being African, we have this reverence for people who are doctors. You know, I was like, oh, I'm not sure if I can actually talk to a doctor, you know. And I kind of sat down and thought about it, and I thought, you know what? I think I'm going to do it. And I remember at the time, you had to buy the Telegraph on a Thursday. And it had all the ads for all the pharmaceutical agencies and all the pharmaceutical companies. And I remember, you know, just picking up the phone and calling, writing applications. And it was no for 2 years.
And what was you doing within it? Because obviously you've said you've got children as well. So what were you doing within that 2 years?
We all hustle.
Yeah.
You know,
what does that look like? I don't know what hustling.
That was probably still, you know, selling records.
Yeah.
Probably working on some casual jobs. Those days it was easy because you could just work into.
So what did you have within that 2 years? Was you in and out of a lot of different jobs?
Yeah, and I also did market research as well.
Yeah,
literally around the corner in Elephant and Castle. So so 2 years. I remember all my rejection letters all in my satchel. I just collected every single one. I said I was not going to rip them up until I got a job. And I remember phoning up for a job actually, and they said, "Oh, we've got a job, but it's only part-time." No, I went for an interview and I didn't get the job, but this was through an agency. And what happened? Went for an interview, didn't get the job, and then I got a call from the agency saying, "Guess what? The person who's on this other territory, they liked you so much, but there's a territory in Kent, and if you can do it, there's a six month job that's available for you to do, because you could also do it in contracts if they didn't take you on head count." So I was so eager. I was like, I'll do it.
Yeah.
I'll do it. Don't care. I'll do it. Don't care where. It could have been in Grimsby. I would have taken it if that kind of makes sense. But lucky enough, it was only in Kent. We all had to get to Kent by 7:00. Lucky Nicholas. I used to get there 8:30.
Yeah.
And I remember my manager, coming with me one day and saying, "Oh, what time should I meet you? 6:30?" I went, "No." I said, "I'll see you in Kent at 8:30. She went, "What?" I said, "Yeah, I'll see you at 8:30. So we got to this surgery at 8:30, and I was just walked into the surgery. All the managers that had turned me down, half of them were in there half the time, and they'd be there from 7:00, waiting for a snippet just to get in to see the doctor. And the doctor will come and go, "Oh, Nicholas, come.
Yeah.
Straight in. Yeah. So literally, I'd do about 5 or 6 calls before 12:00. And I'd get to Kent for 8:00. By 12, I'd finish. It was a part-time role. But then I decided that I wanted to do what was called I wanted to become a hospital rep, which meant that you'd actually, negotiate to actually put the drugs on what's called the hospital formulary. And the formulary is just a book or the choices that the hospitals make in terms of what they give to patients. And for me, I think
So it seems like you had a massive, massive portfolio and responsibility. What was that like at that time in terms of, I suppose, being a black person? What was that? How did you navigate through that? Was it a predominantly white space that you was navigating in?
It was predominantly a white space. And I think for me, the challenge was, there was always this talk, you don't have a degree.
Mm. Mm.
So the mere fact that everybody kept telling me I didn't have a degree, I made sure that I beat everybody when it came to sales. And I think there was this whole thing about, oh, you're so laid back. Yeah, I'm laid back, but I still beat your sales.
Mm.
So the question is, people come up with this connotation of how they think people should be, but you got to kind of like understand the environment that you're in. And I think for me, I learned really quickly how to be in the environment, how to survive the environment that I was in. So one, being a black person. I think also, it was also funny because I remember going for a job interview with this Belgian company. I won't name no names, but if I say Belgian company, everybody will know who it is anyway. And I remember going for a job interview and I remember the lady saying to me, so Nicholas, why should we give you this job? And I said, because I'm black.
But just like that?
Just like that.
Yeah, just like that.
I said, because I'm black. And I think I saw her jaw drop, like, wow, how could he say that? And then she kind of composed herself and said, can you please explain? I said, yeah. I said, for why I'm going to work, there's no other black person. Or there's one or two, but I think it's really me. And I said, the one thing I can't do is I can't make a mistake. Because they'll always remember the black guy. They won't remember the white woman with blonde hair, blue eyes, because there were so many of them. But there was only one black rep who was really working. Actually, I think I was one of the few reps that was actually working in Kent. For the kind of person that I am, I didn't want to be at the top, but then I didn't want to be at the bottom. So for me, it was always about striving to make sure that I was always in a safe place. So it wasn't a case of, oh, look at Nicholas, have you seen his sales figures? Well, I did have atrocious sales figures at once, which I'll never forget. And again, that even taught me a lesson. So for example, I remember when I used to go to the GPs in the morning when I first started, and I used to talk to them and they'd be sitting down writing notes. And I think this was when I first started, and you used to get your sales figures 3 months later. It used to be what was called bricks. So you get them in bricks, like little areas. And everybody was like, yeah, talk to the doctor, build a relationship with them. And then hopefully 3 months' time, you'll see all the prescriptions in the bricks and you can work out who has. And then 3 months later, I got my results.
Yeah.
0, flatline. And it taught me a lesson. And I think the lesson that it taught me was, whenever I go in to see a doctor, you have to look me in the eye. I don't care what you're doing. Look me in the eye when we're talking. So I can get that compliance that, yes, you are going to remember to actually prescribe my pharmaceutical products.
So when you was going in and having these meetings with the doctors at that time, was you just not on it? What was it?
No, I think it was really about trying to understand how the whole system works.
Okay.
And the fact is, you're competing with people who've been in that area probably for the last 10, 15, 20 years. And it's about how do you kind of, what's the word? How do you kind of get the doctor to actually start prescribing your drug when they've got a relationship with somebody for the last 10, 15 years?
Yeah. So when we was talking about, like you saying, being like probably the only black man, one of the only black people in that industry.
I'd say in that area.
In that area, sorry. So do you feel that you had to code switch quite a lot?
Not really. I don't. Do you know what it is? I'm not much of a code switcher.
Yeah, I know that. I definitely know that. But I'm saying at that time,
no, I didn't. And I think, going back to that whole sense of confidence of who I am, I knew who I was. So, I was going in, and as far as I was concerned, I had the best products in the world. I just had to convince you it was the best product. you know, and I think because of the relationships that I had with a lot of doctors and a lot of the consultants, it just made it easier. And I think for me, it was really about increasing my, you know what, I think I was more interested in about how much revenue I was raising with my portfolio than, you know, oh, do I get on with my work colleague, or do I not get on with my work colleague? Oh, do I have to do this? I think that was my target, because I think for me, it was nice just going out to Kent, driving home at the end of the afternoon, going, yeah, I've done a good job, seeing my sales figures, you know, and then knowing that, you know what, anytime I went to a sales conference, I wasn't getting pulled out of the queue. You know, the whole point was, how do you become, you know, the top sales rep in the company or within your region? So for me, it was always striving just to be, you know, the top sales rep in my region, or if not third, but top, second or third.
Let's say you're a younger person. Do you think it's your experience that have made you like that? How does someone get that? I'm a young person and I want that attitude that Nicholas has got. How do I get that to say, you know what, I'm not having it, or become, because you know what some of the young people we work with, it's the opposite. You haven't got a degree. Oh yeah, you're right, I haven't got a degree. And they go within themselves. They don't always fight. How do they get that?
Do you know what? It's funny, because I think, you know, growing up in Nigeria, there's an adage that all Nigerians are used to, and it says, it's condition that makes the crayfish bend.
It's condition that makes the crayfish bend.
So you have to adapt to your environment. So for me, I think having that sense of pride of who I am, it never stopped me from aspiring to get what I want to get. And I don't believe that anybody can stop me from achieving what I need to achieve. And I also think that, you know, when people make excuses that this person stopped me from doing that, it's like, yeah, whatever. Nobody stopped you. You stopped yourself. You just found an easier way to stop yourself from doing it. But I think also, you know, as somebody,
think about, wait, sorry to cut you there, yeah? Think about when you're saying that, because
I'm gonna go back also to how I grew up. So you got to sit and think, you know, I think with the racism and everything else that we had to put up with, we had to like put up or deal with it, if that kind of makes sense. But then also you've got the time of political correctness that came along, which is, oh, do you know, it's okay, you know, it's not about winning, it's about, you know, being part of the competition. The question is, everybody else is competing, and then you're telling people not to compete. So people then become kind of a bit laissez-faire about how they do things. And I think anybody who would tell you, and anybody who comes there will tell you, I tell everybody I'm not PC. Because you know what, if you're not going to do well, I will just tell you, listen, buckle up and do what you need to do. You know, many young people, you know, some people have come in and go, oh, Nicholas is a bit harsh. But then they kind of go, when they come back and they go, do you know what, Nicholas? You really did give me a kick up the backside, and I kind of really needed that, and nobody else was really giving me that.
Do you think that works for everyone now?
No, it doesn't work for everyone.
You know, like, obviously, you know where some of the young people we work with, where they're coming from, I'm saying. So for that young person that's, I don't know, had real issues at home, like with their parents or lack of parenting.
Do you know what? I think, you know, I come across, you know, a wealth of people who can push and those who have hurdles that affect them. But also I think, you know, being a community person, it's about, and I think this is also something that I learned from my pharmaceutical days, about listening. Don't just jump in and go, come on, you can do it. Do you understand? Find out why they can't do it. And I think even though I might say that I'm not politically correct, you know, you still have to sit and listen to people and find out what their issues and what the hurdles are in their lives, if that kind of makes sense, before you kind of push them. So for example, you know, some people will tell you, you know, some people I'm quite happy to kind of like, you know, people close to me, I'm quite happy to push them into the deep end. Because I kind of know them, and you kind of
do that to me quite a bit, don't you?
Of course.
I'm just saying,
yes, you know.
But
the thing is, you don't meet somebody and go, "Come on, man," you know, pull your socks up. You know, kind of get an understanding of who they are, you know, and why. So you know, you and I have conversation. I'm like, dude, just do it. You know, because you know, I know you. We've spoken.
Yeah, of course.
You know, and I think, you know, even people that come here and do stuff, you know, And I might give that extra push, you know, for example, if I know the parents of a particular young person, then I'll kind of like, you know, say, okay. And, you know, even with the community work that I do around here, you know, I have young people coming here, and I can tell you for a lot of the young people that I work with, I know a majority of their parents. So it's not just, oh, do you know what? Come on, you know, pull your socks up, do whatever, stop crying. You know, the whole point is actually having an understanding with those young people and members of their family, either their mum or their dad.
Cool. All right, so thinking about...
He's the right presenter, isn't he?
No, all jokes aside, what advice would you give to young people nowadays?
What advice? Never give up.
When I say giving them advice in terms of being successful.
I think it's always about never giving up. You know, that's the only thing. You know, I was young once, and, you know, I always tell my children this story that I remember when I first came to Peckham. I remember there was a time when things just were not working. And I remember I used to go home, you know, I used to go out for the day and then come home. And I used to use that 4-letter word beginning with F, and, you know, bang on my bed,
fuck.
Like, why? Yeah, fuck.
Yeah, just say it like it's not PG.
I used to go like, fucking hell, why is nothing working? But the thing is, it's funny because I look back now and I'm like, okay, that's why it didn't work. Or that's why that worked and this didn't work. And what it's actually done, it's actually given me a better understanding of how to kind of navigate what I'm doing.
That's hindsight.
Yeah, hindsight. Because I think, you know, when you're young, you know, you're full of all this energy. You want to do so much. But the question is, what is it you're going to do, and what is it you can do? And I think people like myself, I don't know if there's Sagittarius, I don't know whether it's to do with star sign or just creative traits. You've got so many things on your head. What do you do? I'm not a focused person. So, for example, I can come in, and I think that's why I like this place. I can come in, I can either do screen printing, or I can sit down and do something else. You know, for me, you know, when people say no day's ever the same, that's how it is with me. And I've always been like that. So can you imagine I've gone from DJing to becoming a medical sales representative to marketing. I'm always like that. And I think if you don't have that kind of focus, you know, where you have that diligent focus to say, this is what I'm doing and this is where I'm going, you're always going to have that battle in terms of who is it, what do you want to do? You know, my daughter's just gone back to university this year, and, you know, we have this joke because every minute, Dad, I'm going to be this, I'm going to be that. And I'm like, whatever.
Yeah.
Be what you want to be. Do you understand? Just be good at it. That's all I want you to do. And the question is, you know, whatever you do now might not be what you're going to be doing in 20 or 30 years time.
100%. That makes sense. But, all right, so I'm a young person. I come into you, but I'm on the roads. I live a certain way. Do you know what I mean? I've got so much crap going on at home with my parents. My mum's on drugs.
Plan B.
All these things.
I always say plan B.
Right now, but all these things, I'm saying I'm putting myself with when I was young. And then I meet you and cool. You're saying the right things to me, but you can't relate to me. You don't know what I'm going through. So why am I going to really take what you're saying? Because I can see you're successful. But I, sometimes with young people, they need to be able to relate. Like, I'm not saying I don't know, you know your story more. How would a young person relate to you in terms of, forget your work, how would they relate to you? Sometimes you need someone to understand that they've been in the pain that you've been in.
Yeah.
How would they relate to you?
The thing is, you know, as I was saying earlier, it's really about plan B. For me, plan B is always important. If things don't work out, what's your alternative? And I think with young people, you can't ram down advice down their throats. You know, as I said to you, I've got 2 children. I've got a son and a daughter, and everybody used to say, oh, your children are so well behaved. And I'm like, yeah, that's why they're in my environment. Once they're outside the door, I don't know what they get up to. And the thing is, you know, as you said, you don't know what people go through. The only thing that I can tell a young person is, I might have got to where I've got to and I'm doing what I'm doing, But you know what? There's been a lot of work that's gone behind it, and nothing is ever easy. So don't sit and think because you might become successful, things are going to get easier. It might not. I think also, you know, the best piece of advice that I give to people is that I always tell people I'm not a process person.
What does that mean?
Don't write emails, don't write long notes and all that kind of, it's not me. I'm a talker. You know, I think you and I, we're the same, you know. we talk things into action. And if we can't do it ourselves, we always know somebody who can do it. And I think we build those kind of, you know, I think I've built friendships with people, you know, kind of looking at the journey that I was going on. So for example, if you look at LITC Exchange, I intentionally kind of went out my way to link up with Tate Exchange and Tate Modern. I went out my way to build relationships with the Eden Project. You know, I went out my way to build relationships with the council. You know, those are the things that were intentional. And I think I kind of had this vision of how what I was going to do was going to work. And for some reason, I think some of the partners that we chose, it was almost like, I'd look and I go, I want them. And sometimes I wouldn't know why. But the things, as things progress, I was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense now, if that kind of makes sense. And I think I always try and tell people, you know, you've got to kind of work to see where your vision's going. And sometimes it might not work first time round, or it might be the right company, but the wrong personnel. You know, there's lots of factors. And I think, as we said earlier, it's really about how you talk to people and get to understand people. So, for example, if you look at the work we do with LITC Exchange and Pempeople, I think a lot of the people that I've worked with, you know, I've been talking to them for a lot of them for years. Or it might be a case of, you know, someone like you comes along and go, guess what? I know Nicholas. I'm going to talk to my mate because he might be able to help you and steer in the right direction. I think for me, nothing just materializes just like that at times, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So in terms of, we're here at LITC Exchange, can you tell us a little bit about LITC Exchange? And we've been talking and you've been telling us about your journey, but what's the work that you actually do?
So the work that I do, well, the work that I do, I think after my daughter finished college, I decided I wasn't going to work anymore. Well, I didn't say I decided I was going to work, but I kind of wanted to have a bit of a change of career. And for some reason, the community work kept drawing me close and close. For me, you know, it was like, okay, I've done this, done that, and I've done this with these people. And I also look back when I was at college as well, because I used to be one of the social, what were we called? Social coordinators. So I used to organise trips to Alton Towers, and I think, you know, I served on the Tenants and Residents Association. We organised trips, you know, organised all kind of, you know, community events, bringing people together. Because I think I kind of realised I had a knack for talking to people, you know, whether it was through because of my job or the fact I had a car, or if anybody wanted help, you know, people always knocking on my door. So, yeah, I kind of just started thinking about what I was going to do. And I remember, like, when I used to come back from work, I always jumped on my bike. And from jumping on my bike, I remember going to a meeting. They said, oh, do you want to run a bike project? I was like, hell no, not interested. But then it kind of dawned on me that I'm the man who's always got the puncher kit in my house, always got the pump. And it's on my door that everybody's always knocking. So I kind of realized, hold on a minute, even if I don't want to fix bikes, people actually come into my house to fix bikes anyway. So I went back to the council and I said to them, yeah, I'm going to, I want to set up a bike project. And I remember I got £4,000 at the time to run a bike project. And then I remember going to my mum's house in Brixton. I remember going to a meeting because my mum lives not far from Marcus Lipton. So I think there was a meeting in Marcus Lipton. And I thought, let me just pop in there. And I remember talking to the local councillor, Rachel Hayward. And I remember her saying, oh, you're showing off with your bike project in Lambeth. This is where you're really from. You should do it here. And I just said to her, do you know what? I would, but there's so much politics. If you can cut out the politics, I'm quite happy to do it. She goes, okay, hold on, I'll have words. So she then hooked up a meeting, I think, with the transport manager in Lambeth. And I think we then put in a bid to a London sports event. So I think in the end, we ended up with about 30 or 40,000 pounds to run a bike project. And the joke was I couldn't fix a bike to save my life.
Proper salesman, you kept it going, yeah?
Yeah, but do you know what? I think for me, it was always about how do you access money and find those who are good at doing what needs to be done rather than taking the glory.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the name Pempeople came about. It was about people empowering people. So we set up the bike project in Southwark, and I got a couple of local people who were interested in fixing bikes, who were riding bikes, and got them to join our bike club. And then when I went to Lambeth, I think for me, I always said it wasn't about ego. So what I just did, I think I went into the community as someone who lived there and whose mum and dad were living there, and, you know, said to someone, look, I'm going to run a bike project in Lambeth, but it would be nice to have Lambeth people running it and getting people who can fix bikes, but not necessarily accredited. Because I think for me, one of the conditions that I did put was if I was to get a certain amount of money to run a project, I'd make sure that people got accredited by the time we finished the project. So we ended up getting about 8 people who then ended up with their Sitting Gills bike maintenance accreditation. Because what I didn't want to do, and also I think one of the issues that I had was that every time I wanted to run a bike project, I was always told to work with these strangers who didn't know the local community.
Yeah.
So for me, it was really important that we get local people who knew the community, who people can go, oh, guess what? Remember my bike that you fixed the other day? It's not working. I don't know what's happening. Can you help me? Do you understand? Rather than having to wait either 6 months or 2 years before those people come back.
That's right. To interject. That's quite interesting. When you say you wanted it to be basically local and you're talking about strangers.
Yeah.
So what do you mean by that when you say strangers?
So it was people, you'd call up an agency who's got a number of bike mechanics and say, can you send bike mechanics down? And then those people come down and go, yeah, I'm here 12 o'clock. Goodbye, it's 6 o'clock. Oh, sorry, we can't do that. Oh, we can't do this for you, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Whereas when you work with local people, you know, you get, like, for example, like the bike mechanics that we've got, it's almost like you're kind of taking them from one place and you're moving them on to another. So for me, it was that increased knowledge base. So for example, all the people that were who we got accredited, they all knew how to fix bikes, but they didn't know how to do it in an accredited way. So for example, you know, we might use a few screws to kind of like put something together and just bang it, just to hold it together, if that kind of makes sense. You know, so for me, it was about, okay, how are you going to take that street knowledge and that accreditation, that accredited knowledge and kind of put them together. You know, so what I did, I just went out and I spoke to somebody on the estate and I said, look, I need a couple of mechanics who are going to come out and help us fix bikes. And I remember it was funny because I think the first bike project we did in Lambeth, I think we had probably about 150 people turn up.
Yeah. What word of mouth? How did you
just
get that?
Word of mouth. So. Because what happened is people were going and going, yeah, we're setting up a bike project, come and support us. To be honest, it was marketing that I could never afford.
Yeah. Yeah. And when was that?
We're talking probably about 2010, 2011, between 2010 and 2013.
Do you think that will still work now? That same sort of...
Yeah. Do you know what it is? I think even if you look at what we do here, you know, people are always asking, how can we always get people engaged in what we do? Because, you know, we always make people the center of what we're doing. So, for example, at the moment, I'm thinking about doing an open day here. And the question is, it's going to be local people. It's going to be creative local people that lots of other local people are following. And we get them to come and host and do their thing. And they go around and say to people, guess what? I'm going to be at LITC. You know, I'm going to be with Pempeople. You know, come down and check me out. And also when I do things, I always tell people, you know what, number one, foot forward. If you can't bring anyone, don't expect to be on the next event.
Yeah. So what is LITC then?
So LITC was an idea. So when I first hooked up with the Eden Project and a lot of the young people that we do work with. So this area was originally called LITC Ward.
Okay.
And I set up a small group and I called it the LITC. Well, the project was supposed to be called the LITC Improvement Project because I kind of realized that lots of people wanted stuff but couldn't get access to it. And it was about how do we find that information? How do we work on that information and make things happy? And also provide opportunities for a lot of the young people that we were working with and delivering projects with. So I started doing that. I started working and, delivering projects, doing things like the big lunch, getting all the young people to come out. And for me, the big lunch was really about the young children as opposed to like a whole family.
Yeah.
It's about, celebrating. So for example, when we were giving out flyers, we were giving it to the young children as opposed to the parent. Also, that was a bit of a marketing gimmick because we knew that as soon as you gave it to the children, people were like, oh, party, free food, games, this, that, and that. Yeah. And they'll remind the parents, says, Mom, don't forget tomorrow, we've got to go to the park. We used to have like 600, 700, 800 people coming out to these events. And I'll probably say more than that, actually, because it was 600, 700 parents who were coming because not everybody got the ID. It was the parents that got the ID. So, talking to young people about what they wanted. We also got funding from Community Development Foundation, got some money from the Eden Project. And we were able to buy things like trampolines and other bits and pieces for young people, just to enjoy things. Because I think for me, living around here was almost like living in a concrete jungle. It's just it's about flats after flats with a few, amenities. And also you can't forget that not everybody was using the youth clubs. It was like also how do you provide different alternatives? So I kind of started doing that project, and then I think, trying to look for grants, I kind of started looking at the statistics of the area. And to me, what the statistics said and how some of the people felt was sometimes a lot of it was true and sometimes it wasn't. So it was like, level of deprivation, there's low educational attainment. But yeah, I'm talking to lots of people who are trying really, really hard to get really good grades. And as parents, we're always telling people, always try and be the best that you can be. So I think through doing all these projects, I then did another project just literally upstairs with a young gentleman called Jason Cameron, who was dyslexic. And I remember it quite well because I remember there was some funding available and I said to him, you should apply for it. And he goes, I'm dyslexic. And I went, yeah, and what's your point? Doesn't mean you can't do it, and doesn't mean you can't even read some of it, And I said, look, I'll help you to do it, but you need to put a bit of drive and determination into it. For me, it wasn't the fact that he was dyslexic. It was how much effort were you going to really, really put into it if that's what you really wanted to do. And for me, he was a really talented individual. He was a graphic designer. He did all our posters. He ran dance classes upstairs. So even when we did the big lunch, we got him to do all the choreography with all the young children, all the different groups. So for me, LITC was really about how do you give power to the people and how do you get people who live locally to be involved in different things that were happening, because I think there was a big disconnect between what the council were saying was happening in the area and how local people saw it. So I kind of just started, this LITC project thing. And I think what then happened is I then approached one of our local councillors. I think I had to start reading about indices of deprivation to get an understanding of how the council statistically saw the area, because they didn't live in our shoes to see what it was like. So it was like, how do I use that information and put it to them? So I was using that information and sending them emails. Look at this and look at that and look at this. And I don't agree with this because you guys are saying this, but this is what's actually happening. Then I met one of my local councillors, and it was funny because remember the garages that I actually wanted to were across the road called Bromyard.
Yeah.
And I remember I bumped into him next to it, and I said, and he was a cabinet member actually at the time, and I said to him, we need a community centre in our community that works for local people. And he said, we've got one. And I'm thinking, I know this area like the back of my hand.
Where's that?
Where?
Yeah.
And he went, Nunhead. And I went, this ain't Nunhead ward.
Yeah.
This is your ward, and you don't have one in your ward. We need one in your ward. You can be a cabinet member for the whole of the borough. That's not my problem.
Yeah.
This is your ward, so we need something in here. And then he introduced me to the director of housing and the director of properties. We had a conversation, and bingo, here was LITC. So for me, LITC is a hyper-local project, that was about building capacity and upskilling local people. And then it was funny because as soon as we got it, information came out that this area was then going to become what's called like a new opportunity area. Like lots of money was going to be poured in. There was going to be all this regeneration that was going to happen. So I think for me, it's been really good that, and I think going back to what you said earlier about, if there's a mistake that you could rectify, what would it be? And, as I said, all the things that I've done has kind of led up to now. So like working in the pharmaceutical industry, being able to talk to different individuals, being a DJ, talking to people on the street, it brings all these different worlds together. And I think for me, this is what LITC's been about. It's about talking to developers, it's about talking to the regeneration team in Southwark Council, talking to people in the mayor's office, talking to architects, but also talking to the people and having their vision at the front of it.
So when you say talking about architects, what's that for? Because people can't actually see what this space is.
So when I say talking to architects, it's not just about talking to architects about my project. It's about talking to architects in the wider scheme of the whole Old Kent Road. And I think for me, it's about how do we provide opportunities and how do we provide spaces that benefit local people.
And is that what LITC Exchange
is? And that is what LITC is about. And I think LITC is about being that first rung on the ladder where people can say, hey, look at me, look what we're doing. Come and see us. Don't discount us just because you don't know who we are and where we are, And I think for me, I was not going to turn my nose up at the opportunity to have a space like this. And for me, it's about taking it. For me, it's about taking it and making the most out of it. And I've been really glad in terms of all the activities we've been able to do. But at the same time, organizations and funders need to understand that we're not talking about the code when we put our applications. We're just going, we want to run an activity. And I think funders need to also need to understand that as community groups who don't have funding, it's difficult. And these are some of the challenges.
100%.
But LITC's really, LITC's a hyper-local project that we're doing to support local people, to get local people involved in the whole regeneration process. And I think for me, I'm kind of happy because I think through a lot of the activities that we've done and the fact that we've not really been a funded organization, I think we've kind of changed the landscape in terms of how people talk about community engagement. They don't just wake up and go, we spoke to a couple of people. I think now it's like, okay, we really need to engage with people because I think for me, it's almost like saying, guess what? If you don't do things in a particular way, Nicholas is going to do it and he's going to make it look really, really good. And it's really bad if he can do it with no funding and other organizations who are getting funding can't get people to even to attend their events.
Okay. Looking back at your younger days, what would you change about
what would I change? Do you want me to be honest?
Yeah.
I think I'd be a bit more capitalistic. Yeah. Because the thing is, I think you need the finance to do what you want to do. I think as community people, sometimes we're trying to do this trickle-down effect. I wouldn't say trickle-down. I think that's, undermining, the work that many of us do. But sometimes we have to generate the money to do what we need to do. And I think even like now, I say to my children, look, go out, work, make your money. And in 10, 20 years' time, do what you want to do because you've got that security. And I think for a lot of people like ourselves who are doing stuff in the community, we don't do it because we want to. We do it because we don't have a choice. You know, we look at the people who live within our environment, and we don't want them to go down. We don't want them to make the mistakes that we've made, and we don't want them to live the life that, you know, some of our parents have lived. You know, I look at this, you know, even like what I do now, I look at Old Kent Road, I look at this area, and you know, for me, all the young people tell you, you know, my bugbear is, how do we get young people to afford some of these expensive houses that are coming up on Old Kent Road? You know, we can't keep going, oh, we want, you know, council rate housing, because there's not enough of them. What we need to do is teach people how they get into buying some of the more expensive houses, actually, quote unquote, the affordable ones.
What do you say?
Affordable.
Oh, okay, affordable housing.
Yeah, affordable, because affordable is 80% of the market rate. Do you understand? But the question is, for many of us who live around areas like Old Kent Road, you know, we're not targeted. If you go to Singapore, you go to Malaysia, you'll probably see flats that are worth, you know, £500,000 advertised in different countries. You know, with young people not being given an advantage to say, okay, this is coming on the market in 5 years' time. Do you want to buy it? So it doesn't give them time to save. So as far as they're concerned, well, why should I bother? It's not for me.
You mentioned mistakes, right? You said about mistakes, young people making mistakes. So looking at your own life, what would you say was one of the biggest mistakes you've made, and where?
Well, what's one of the biggest mistakes? Oh, does anyone ever admit to making mistakes?
Well, that's part of the development, isn't it?
Do you know what?
People, that's it.
I think I wouldn't say mistakes, because I am who I am, and I would say that my destiny or my fate has led me down the path that I've gone. But I think there would be certain things that I would change. So, for example, I used to be quite an avid reader. I don't read that much anymore. You know, I could find the time to read more, and I think that's one thing that I would like to do, because I think, you know, reading and increasing, you know, what you read and how you read, it can also affect you. And I think for someone like me, I do read a lot, but I don't have that focus to like just sit down and read, you know, articles, papers and newspapers like I used to. And the question is, you know, information is really the currency of what we do. You know, if you don't have that, I think for me, I'm lucky that, you know, as much as maybe I don't read that much, I think my currency is about having social capital. I talk to people, I hear things. So all the things that I'm supposed to read, you know, I get all that information firsthand.
So in your whole life, with all your experience being in Peckham and being in Loughborough, you're trying to tell me reading. I want to know.
No, I'm just saying that's for me.
And I'm saying for you, because I know you, right? Yeah. So you've grown up where you've grown up. You've been in Nigeria. You've seen all these things. You've been in this environment. I'm asking you, like, because we're talking about young people watching this. I want you to tell me, like, a real mistake that's really something that's really affected you. Not like what you should have done better, like reading and whatnot.
You see, the thing is that there could have been mistakes that I've made, but the whole point is, the way I see it, everything that I've done up until now has helped me be who I am now.
Of course, but touch on that. Touch on the real stuff, not that's the politician answer. But yeah, I should read more. That's politics. It's something you should do. No. It's something you should do. No. I'm talking about the nitty-gritty.
I tell you why I say read more, because do you know what it is?
Information is key.
There's a lot of information, and that information, if you really sit and look at how this world is, it is about information.
Of course.
And the question is, you know, like, for example, I tell my son, read more. My daughter buys me books. Do you understand?
Yeah, no,
even to the point that I feel that I feel comfortable with my daughter because she's reading more.
Yeah, no, 100%.
She's knowledgeable. Does that make sense?
And knowledge is power.
Yeah.
There's no two ways about it.
So don't get me wrong. When I say that, you know what, I wish I could read more. I mean, I probably suffer from some kind of dyslexia because, you know, the thing is, I can read, I can write. Like I might not like punctuations and commas and stuff. Yeah. You know, and then sometimes I don't like reading back what I've read, you know. And I think the one mistake that do you know what? I don't know whether I should call it a mistake. I'm not going to call it a mistake. I think educationally, that was the one thing I never really strived to complete and finish. And the thing is, I'm not going to say it's a mistake that I've made, but I think, you know, like with my son, you know, he did, you know, I think he went to Lewisham College, and I think with my son and my daughter, and I just said my daughter's gone back to university. She took time out, and I just kind of like just left them. And I think maybe what I should have done was actually, you know, encouraged her and be there more for her when she was actually doing it. You know, just to make sure that, you know, as my future generation, they're in a much better place than I am. I think that's the only I mean, don't get me wrong, I am there for my children, but the thing is, I wish I could have been there a lot more.
Yeah, and that's something it's quite hard. It's not that it's hard, but when you're not with the mother of your child, it creates that distance. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, my children lived with me.
Yeah.
But the question is, I think I could have still been there a lot more.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
So, you know, like I said to you, I went to work in the pharmaceutical industry. Oh, Dad, I need kickers. Yeah, come on, let's go East Street. Oh, Dad, I need this. Yeah, come on. It was almost like I had the money. Yeah, take. To me, that's not been about being a good parent. It's about being there for them. And I think as I've got older, and I'm beginning to understand about parenting. You know, I will say thank you to my daughter because, you know, she's really taught me a lot. You know,
so do you feel like you wasn't there as much?
I was there, but I wasn't there. It was like, come on, children, let's go, jump in the car. So I still remember when, you know, my daughter, they turned 14, 15. I was like, come on, going to a party. They were like, no. It was that shock, like, I beg your pardon? You're my children, you're supposed to come with me. But then having that English upbringing was like, okay, do you know what? Yeah, I'll go without you guys. And I felt like I was walking like this. Like there were ghosts. I'm walking with two ghosts, if that kind of makes sense. Yeah. Like my children are supposed to be there, but they're not there. You know, and I think it's at that time when they started being a bit more independent, you know, I think I should have stepped up a bit more. You know, I mean, don't get me wrong, we've got a really, really good relationship now. But I think that time, it was almost like, that teenage rebellion time, if that kind of makes sense, where you kind of go, oh, you know what, they're always moody, you know, they're always this, they're always that, oh, you don't listen, you know. But the question is, I wasn't listening. Does that make sense?
No, it does, and it's making me think. It's making me think about my own situation, not being like with the mother of my child, and thinking, I do spend a lot of time with my daughter, but sometimes it's easier to just say, go and play Roblox, or just do that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's quite hard. Like, do you know what I mean? There's other things going on, but I think sometimes, obviously, my daughter's younger, but the question is, I might see myself a certain way, but how do they see me?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you get what I'm saying? I can think, oh yeah, no, I was there, or I've done this.
Yeah.
But they might think, well, you're a prick. But it was a crap dad.
But the question is, you see, that's what I'm saying. I said, I thought I was there.
Yeah,
I was, but I wasn't 100% there.
Yeah.
And looking back on it now, I was there, but I wasn't there.
Yeah.
It's like, Dad, can we have money? Yeah. Go shop. You know, when they gone to the shop, it's like, oh yeah, I can just take a break, have a cup of coffee and chill out for a little bit. Do you understand?
Yeah, 100%.
But I think that was, for me, looking back, that would have been the best time to actually really, really bond with my children. You know, and I think I've had to end up doing it afterwards as opposed to doing it then.
Okay. And in terms, I don't know, like, How did you get that? I can see you've got a little scar there. Do you know what I mean? How did you get that?
Like you, I was in the battles.
I don't know. I don't know what battles you were in. I don't know what battles you were in.
Nah, I had a fight when I was young, and I got marked with a Coca-Cola bottle.
That was it.
Yeah.
What school fight random?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that all that happened?
Yeah.
So how old are you?
Yeah.
No, how old are you? How old were you when?
Well, I was quite young actually.
Mm. Yeah, how young?
Just young.
Yeah, what was you at school?
No, I was at school.
College?
I was at school.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it wasn't nothing. You didn't ever get involved in no.
No.
Gang stuff.
I mean, to be honest, I wasn't here when the whole gang thing really kicked off.
Mm.
You know, I think, you know, like I said, I was born in the 60s. You know, I think there was more issues about, you know, National Front at the time rather than gangs. But the thing is, at the same time, gangs...
National Front, for people that don't know, what's that? National Front?
It was, you know, Skinhead Party, the precursor to, you know, it was a racist party that was randomly going out beating up black people at the time. And I think, you know, 60s and 70s was when they were quite prolific. So I think, you know, we always went out, you know, when we went out, it was always with the whole family. Mm. You know, lucky enough, we lived in areas where we can just jump on a bus. And I think for me, I don't really have that many. No, actually, I do have memories of racial incidences happening when I was in primary school. Mm-hmm. But then, you know, I think I became, you know, well, I think I got beat. Well, I didn't get beaten up. I got hit once, actually. I remember going home and telling my mum, and then getting beaten up again for actually telling my mum that I got beaten up in school. That never ever happened again.
Yeah. One of them.
And I became the top fighter in school at the time because, and it was funny because...
You don't strike me as a man that used to fight a lot, though.
I had to.
Yeah?
Yeah, I had to. And again, that was... I think for me, I've always kind of put racism to one side. Mm. You know, and I think a lot of the fights that I did have at school were racially motivated.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, but it was a case of I had to go back to school the next day and I had to deal with it. And the only way I could deal with it was by fighting and beating up those individuals, which I did, you know, to the point that, you know, even though my brothers and my immediate junior brother and my immediate sister, we all went to the same school, they didn't face it because it was, you know, people got up to them and say, oh, you know, make all kind of comments. And they'll just say, you know, Nicholas is my brother. And that was it. Mm. You know, even to the point that when I went back to Nigeria in 1979, I even took one of my bloodied vests as a memento.
Yeah. So what, from the time when you went back to Nigeria and you came back, so when you came back, it wasn't like that anymore in terms of fighting and whatnot. It was a completely different atmosphere.
It was completely different because remember, I'd been away for about 6 years. Mm. So most of my friends has kind of dispersed. There was a few friends that lived around Flaxman Road who were still there. And I think because I'd left Streatham, I'd moved to Brixton. It was kind of like a new era. But also at the same time, everybody was much younger than myself. Mm. And then I had one friend, Chima, who lived across the road, and Joe. But then, you know, as I said, before I knew it, I was in a 3-piece suit going back to Nigeria. Yeah. So I didn't really have that many friendships that, you know, that were really formulated during those teenage years where, you know, especially where young boys really get to bond with one another. Yeah. You know, you have fights and you kind of work out who's who and who's in what pecking. I didn't have none of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, completely. All right, and so to be fair, it's really fascinating, some of the things that you've been saying and the journey that you've gone along and the journey that you're still on. So one of the ways I like to end this, looking at the current climate and how everything is right now, and how you're feeling. If you could be an animal, any animal, what animal would it be and why? And bearing in mind everything you've just said about your journey, what you're upon now.
Oh, if I was going to be an animal, if I was really going to be an animal, I think I'd be a bear.
Bear, yeah. Why is that?
The thing is, I like to be on my own, but the thing is, I don't like when people kind of disturb the peace. And I think when I talk about disturbing the peace, it's almost like we live in an environment and things have its equilibrium, and then you come along and you kind of change it. It benefits you, but it doesn't benefit us who live in this environment. So you're coming into our patch and you're changing it. We can't find the berries. We can't find, the nice fruits that we need to eat because you've gone and moved it for your benefit and you've not taken into consideration. And I think that's when I become angry and I become the angry bear.
On that note, an absolute pleasure, sir.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks.